All of us in the business of making products and putting them into the hands of others try to do our job so that users of our products will not be injured by them. But despite our best efforts to make things foolproof, there is some hazard of injury to some people in the use or misuse of the products we make. Road signs warn of hazards on highways and streets. Sharp curves, slippery when wet, children crossing. Lined driveway, low bridge. When there are hazards in using the products we make, our laws and our courts require that there will be effective warning signs. Late last year, a young woman named Ramos was seriously injured while using a product. I'll call it Product X. There are many thousands of cases like it every year. Fortunately, Ms. Ramos recovered, but she faced a lifetime of disability. She sued the manufacturer. It was proved in court that there were no safety defects in design or manufacture, but there was one alleged defect that could endanger the user and make the manufacturer liable for damages. The manufacturer of Product X anticipated that someone might have an accident. They put a warning on the product, but a succession of expert witnesses testified that the warning was defective.
The label as a warning sign is totally inadequate. Nowhere does it say there is danger. Nowhere does it say or show what will happen if the warning is ignored. The label ignores the manufacturer's own studies that showed many users speak and read Spanish. Ms. Ramos couldn't understand this warning.
The jury agreed, and the award for damages was very high. As the senior product liability specialist in our law department, I want to see that our company's products steer clear of injuries and judgments like the Product X case. Recently, we acquired a subsidiary that makes appliances for institutional and home kitchens. I looked at the proposed warning labels and operating instructions for a new product and recommended some changes. The product development group took exception, and Ted Brooks and Susan Hartman came by to voice their objections. They brought a design department model of the new product.
Mark, your recommendation would label this product dangerous.
Well, the fact is, the product could be dangerous to some users because of hazards you describe in your own instruction manual. If there's an accident, the court might decide that your label is inadequate to warn of hazards you knew exist.
But if the user reads the instructions and follows them, deploys the safety guard properly, the user won't have an accident.
Oh, we know that there's always going to be someone somewhere who won't do it right. So someone could get hurt.
Then there might be a lawsuit. That's why we put the caution notice on the label, to cover us in case someone like that tries to make us responsible for an accident that was the user's own fault.
The fact is, our products have a great safety record. We've never had to go to court over an injury.
You're very lucky. Thousands of product liability lawsuits are filed every year. Injuries can ruin lives, and injury cases can ruin whole companies. Let me show you a few points I made in a seminar a few days ago. Because of the way things are in the world of litigation today, people who develop, design, test, manufacture, sell, and promote products have to think defensively. You don't want to see your customers exposed to injury and our company exposed to damage claims because of a defect that can be corrected.
I don't know how you can use the word defect. That makes it sound as if we were negligent putting it on the market.
The fact you can show you were not negligent may not win your case in court. Not today. The manufacturer may be held strictly liable if the plaintiff proves that a product was defective and unreasonably dangerous, and that it caused damage or injury during normal use.
There's that word again, defective.
In the eyes of a court, there are three kinds of defects that can make your product unreasonably dangerous: design defects, manufacturing defects, and defects in warnings and instructions. Failure to adequately warn the user about hazards that you know exist or that you reasonably should know exist may be considered a product defect. And by the way, building a case on defective warnings and instructions is often simpler, less expensive, and easier for the jury to understand than a case about design or manufacturing defects. It doesn't take a parade of expert technical witnesses for a plaintiff's attorney to convince a jury. If the manufacturer had only added 5 words of warning, this accident wouldn't have happened to my client.
That must explain why so many products have warning labels plastered all over them. Look at all these labels. Now, you'd think that this was for a complicated machine, but it's just for a simple stepladder.
Can't you just see some guy reading all these labels as he climbs step by step up to his roof? He reaches the top step and there's one more label under his foot. He looks down to read it. His foot slips, he falls 10 feet and breaks his arm.
Maybe there should be a warning label on the bottom step telling him to put on his glasses so he can read the label on the top step.
Seriously, Mark, how far do we have to go?
Pretty far. Laws generally say that you have a duty to warn if your product is hazardous and you know or should know that fact, and if the hazard is not obvious or cannot be easily seen by any expected user, and very important, if the hazard could be present during any foreseeable use or misuse of your product.
That covers a lot of ground. Who should we warn?
If there's a hazard, you should warn anyone who might use or even come in contact with the product. Now, that would include purchasers, users, handlers, employers, consumers, and possibly bystanders, and even people who make unauthorized use of the product. A kid who sneaks into a tool shed and starts up a power motor, or opens a bottle and swallows a bright-colored liquid.
What if this kid can't read?
Do you have to draw him a picture?
Yes, a pictograph, like these. Even though the law may not require it, a pictograph is almost always a good idea. The label in the Ramos case used no pictographs, and neither does yours on this new product.
We thought we were complying with all the regulations and standards, not to mention plain common sense.
You people are very expert in the product design business. You should talk with someone who's just as expert in the safety communications business. What I have in mind is a conference with our consulting human factors engineer, Dr. William Stanley. I don't know how many people may have been saved from injury and how many millions of dollars we may have saved as a result of this company following Bill Stanley's advice. Can I set it up for you?
Sure.
What you need to know about this subject can't be compressed into a few minutes or a few hours, but I want to introduce you to some basic criteria for effective safety warnings. Then we can set up a seminar for you and some of your people, probably a couple of days to go into detail.
Bill, Mark Johnson, the product liability attorney in our law department, suggested that Ted and I show you this cardboard mock-up of our new product with our proposed safety labeling.
It's a product for food service, either institutional or for home use. The controls are here, and this safety guard prevents fingers from touching the machinery. The guard is designed so that when you open it, the power automatically shuts off here. And on the bottom, there's a door that allows you to service or clean the inside.
Now, with the automatic shut-off, the chances of injury are practically nil, but just to cover ourselves, we added a warning on the instruction panel down there.
Maybe you'd want to redesign it.
Let me give you a few basic concepts, and I think you'll be able to redesign it yourself. A good warning label should meet 6 basic tests.
Does it alert the user to the level of hazard? Does it show and tell, even to someone who can't read the words? Does it state the hazard clearly? Does it describe the consequences of ignoring the warning? Does it instruct the user how to avoid those consequences? Is it visible? Can it be seen and read easily by the user?
Now, before we discuss your product, let's see how these 6 basic tests apply to a product we can talk about more objectively. Now, you both know what the hazard of this product is. If the matches should light accidentally, you could get burned. So, presumably, the matches are protected by closing the cover before lighting the match. And there's a warning label, close cover before striking.
But people don't pay any attention to it.
Well, maybe that says something about the effectiveness of this label. Let's design a better one.
You start with hazard analysis. Now, you may want to hire independent specialists to help you anticipate the behavior of people who may use or come in contact with the product. Be very clear about what the hazard is. Visualize how your product will be used, where it'll be used and by whom, how it might be misused and by whom.
Put yourself in their shoes. How do people handle this product?
Well, most people just pull off a match and close the cover and light up, or light up a grill or a fireplace.
Or someone trying to light a cigarette in a storm will leave the cover open and use it to cup the flame against the wind.
When we were younger, sometimes we thought it was pretty smart to bend the match over and try to light it with one hand, or take the match and hold it between the cover and the striking material and give it a yank.
Or if I go into a dark room, I might pull off 3 at a time and strike them all at once until I find the light switch.
Yeah, did you ever see a guy use a corner of a matchbook cover to pick his teeth?
Gross. Or someone might leave a book of matches on a coffee table where children could get a hold of them.
That's the idea. Now you're anticipating where and under what circumstances it's reasonable to expect the product to be used, and by whom. Educational levels, ethnic background, sex, age, strength, size. Now, let's define the nature and seriousness of the consequences. What can happen if someone ignores the warning?
Well, a spark could ignite all the matches. You could burn your fingers.
Or your clothes could catch fire and you could get seriously injured.
You could drop the burning matches in a pile of newspapers and burn down a house.
Could be serious. Well, let's assume there's enough product hazard here to require a safety warning label, and we'll design one that will meet the 6 tests I mentioned. Now, the first thing a label must do is to alert the user to the level of hazard, which is determined by calculating the probability and seriousness of injury. In engineering terms, you might say that H equals S times P. The hazard level equals the seriousness of injury times the probability that it'll happen.
The level of hazard determines the signal word to use. Danger indicates a hazard which has a high probability of resulting in death or severe bodily injury, or possibly major property damage. Warning is serious but less inevitable. A hazard which has some probability of resulting in death, severe bodily injury, or major property damage. Caution is less serious, but still demands attention. It indicates a hazard which may result in minor bodily injury or property damage. A common warning system associates a color with each level of hazard. Danger is red, warning is orange, caution is yellow. The standard international hazard alert symbol should also appear because this communicates to people in any language, look out.
So the matchbook cover completely fails your first test for a good warning label.
There's no signal word at all.
What should it be? What's the level of hazard? The signal word should accurately reflect your analysis of how probable the hazard is and how serious the consequences may be.
If the danger could kill someone and you label it caution, you mislead the user into a false sense of security. On the other hand, you don't want to overuse danger. It's like crying wolf. After a while, people simply ignore it. You wouldn't label a box of stationary danger paper cuts. Cutting your finger on a piece of paper is just not serious enough. A big paper cutter with a sharp blade rates more than a mere caution. This machine could cut your hand off. You want the operator to know that.
I wouldn't go so far as to say if you don't close the matchbook cover, there will be severe injury or death.
I wouldn't label it danger.
On the other hand, caution would suggest that only minor injury or damage could result. In fact, not closing the cover could lead to very serious consequences.
In practice, you might want to research the probabilities, but for now, let's assume that if you don't heed the warning to close the cover, a fire accident could cause severe injury or even death. The appropriate signal word would be warning. So you have the first element in our blueprint for a safety label. Now, in this and in many cases, you have to show the hazard. Suppose the warning label read like this. What does it tell you?
Nothing. It's gibberish.
That's exactly what the words on the usual book of matches tell a child or someone who doesn't read English. Nothing. When words fail, pictures can help warn. We call these pictographs, diagrams that communicate an idea, a command, a warning. No smoking, danger of skidding, reserved for handicap. Many pictographs are standardized, and a great many hazards are described with graphic clarity in specially developed pictographs. Look at these and see if you get the message. You may have to create a pictograph to fit your circumstances. Now, what are the hazardous aspects of the Book of Matches?
Flame and the open matchbook cover
Burns to the hand.
and to the face or clothing.
graphic designer might simplify the pictograph to focus the eye on the hazard quickly and unmistakably. Well, so far your warning label has a signal word to alert the user and a pictograph to show and tell the user what the hazard is. The next 3 steps involve using a few well-chosen words to state the hazard, describe the consequences, and instruct the user on how to avoid those consequences in that order. How would you state the nature of the hazard?
Flammable substance?
Use concrete words. What do you see in front of you?
Open matches.
How hazardous are they?
Highly flammable open matches.
What are the hazards? What could happen?
Ignite, might cause accidental ignition.
And possible serious injuries.
That says it. But does it communicate? You want to telegraph the idea like a headline. Divide the statement into 2 elements: the hazard, highly flammable open matches, and the consequences, might cause accidental ignition and possible serious injuries. Well, that's a lot of words to describe the hazard. Simplify. Can we assume people know that matches burn?
Sure. Eliminate highly flammable.
You want to use precise words that say exactly what you mean. Open matches. The cover is what's open. The matches are...
The matches are exposed.
So, open matches really means exposed matches. That states the hazard in 2 precise concrete words. The next message element describes the consequences.
Might cause accidental ignition and possible serious injuries.
Again, simplify, telegraph it. Make every word count. Accidental, for example, doesn't count for much. You want to make the wording strong. Words like possible soften the impact. The verb might cause is too indefinite. Exposed matches can cause an accident. Can cause is stronger. Your language needs to be direct. Ignition. If you saw flames coming out of my wastebasket, would you yell ignition?
No. Fire.
Can cause fire. Active verb, definite, strong, and concrete. And serious injuries. What kind of injuries?
Injuries to the hands and face.
Burns.
How bad?
Severe.
Can cause fire and severe burns. That says it all. So you've stated the hazard, described the consequences. Now instruct the user on how to avoid those consequences.
He should be sure the cover is closed.
Make the verb active.
Secure the cover.
Any Navy man will know just what you mean.
Yeah. Close the cover.
Close the cover before striking?
Striking. What does that mean? That's striking. Employees picketing a factory gate is striking. There are air strikes.
Gold strikes.
Okay. What I mean in simple English is lighting a match. Close the cover before lighting a match.
Fine. That says exactly what you mean. Headline it by eliminating words like the and a. Well, this wording is concrete, precise, strong. The verbs are active. It's in headline style. No non-essential words and no contractions that can be misread or misunderstood. Now, group the words on separate lines so that your eye reads them the same way you speak or think. Exposed matches is one thought. Can cause fire and severe burns are 2 thoughts, 2 lines. The command close cover is 1 thought, and before lighting match is a 2nd thought. You have all the elements of a warning. Now you need to make the label legible, visible. It's a matter of design, size, placement, how and where the label appears in its environment on the product. Design is a whole course in itself, but let me give you a few main points. The signal word and symbol and color bar at the top of the label are standard. The pictograph is beneath the signal word with space around it. A black line border encloses the warning and instruction. The 3 message elements follow the pictograph. The hazard and the consequences of ignoring the warning are in a bold, simple typeface. The how to avoid the consequences message is in a lighter typeface. Punctuate each sentence with a period, not an exclamation point or some other mark. Capitalize the message like sentences. Don't make excessive use of capitals. Don't center the message. Hard to read. In printer's jargon, set the lines flush to the left margin, ragged right. The most common format is vertical, like this, but you may have to use a horizontal format like this to make it fit. And if space is limited, you may have to decide which elements are most important and which can be dropped. Now, it's important to consider the label environment, where the product is used, where you're going to position the label on the product. Now, where would you put the warning on this matchbook?
Obviously not on the back, it'd never be seen.
Yeah, right on the front cover.
But when the hazard is greatest, when the cover is open, where's the warning?
Out of sight.
Or the user might hold your product so that the label appears at an oblique angle. Put yourself in the user's position. How will the label look from the user's point of view? How far away will the label be from the user? Well, the label may have to be larger. There are tables of standard formulas for the size of type required for readability at various distances.
How bright will the area be where your product is used? The type might have to be larger to be legible in dim light.
There's a lot to this.
Yeah, there certainly is. More than we can cover today. We should set up a seminar where you and your people can go into more detail. For example, if you'll hand me that. Thank you. Now,
How you handle hazards you discover after the product is in distribution, recalls or warnings to present users. Technical details like selecting label materials to make your label last for the life of the product. Labeling required by the Federal Hazardous Substances Act and other state and federal laws, including Right to Know. There are standards set by agencies like OSHA and voluntary standards established by societies and associations.
but merely meeting standards may be seen by a court as a bare minimum response to a hazard. You may be well advised to exceed standards. Courts vary, state laws vary.
And that's why you should include legal counsel on your team during the process of analyzing hazards and designing warnings.
You're right, there is a lot to this subject, but this morning all I expect you to take away are a few principles which will help you review the safety labeling on this new product of yours.
Well, for openers, the positioning of our label's all wrong.
Right. It should be on top, near the hazard, facing the user.
Well, maybe there should be a second label inside the safety guard where the hazard's even greater.
The level of hazard on our label is too low.
Yeah, if somehow the appliance is on and you open the safety guard and touch this, you will be severely injured.
So this label should say danger.
And our hazard identification and instructions shouldn't be buried alongside other information and instructions.
Could probably add another one someplace along here.
I see Bill Stanley did his job.
He's terrific. We and our people learned a lot from him. And I think these warnings will satisfy Dr. Stanley's 6 tests. See, the new warning label alerts the user to the level of hazard. The pictograph shows at a glance the hazard and the consequences of ignoring the warning.
The message states the hazard clearly. It describes the consequences with concrete nouns, active verbs, and strong, explicit auxiliary words. Ditto for the way it instructs how to avoid those consequences.
And it's designed and positioned so that it's visible and easy to read from the user's point of view. And when the safety guard is raised, a second label is positioned where it warns of an even greater level of hazard.
And the third label, positioned on the service door, warns not to bypass or tamper with the safety switch.
It's too bad.
Too bad?
Too bad you'll never get to shake hands with the person you've just saved. Because with this new labeling, you've saved someone, somewhere, from being badly mangled by our new product. You may have saved quite a few people. I hope we sell 1 million of them. At least now I do. I like it. That's great. Obviously, the best way to protect your customers and your company from injury, damage, and loss is to design products that are totally hazard-free. You can't do that, and barring a miracle, chances are you can't. You want to be sure that your product offers the protection of effective warning signs, safety labels that work.